general revelation is basically the the natural order of things, the natural law, and the which is connected to the divine law or the eternal law of God. That God has a will. Okay, when we use the word law, we should really think of it in terms of will. Okay, so God has a will, and His will is one. Okay, so God has a will, and it is a holy and adorable and wonderful will, and that will is what works everything in the universe. So God, so we talk about the law of gravity. Well, yeah, it's a law, sure, but it's actually God's will upholding everything. And
Hmm.
we see this in Colossians chapter 1, where Paul is talking about Jesus and the profound Christology. It's one of the most profound Christological statements in the New Testament. And Paul elaborates in a few verses in Colossians chapter 1 the very power and omnipotence of Jesus Christ, and he says that in him all things subsist, and that means that he upholds the entire universe. Jesus said to his disciples, "Without me, you can do some things." No, he said, "Without me, you can do nothing." There's nothing that can be done without Christ participating within it. So in that sense, all things were created by Christ. All things were created through him. All things, he upholds all things. And so in that sense, God is totally omnipotent and moving, to completely hold all things together. So his will is that will that is apparent to everyone in a general way, regardless of whether you're a Christian or not. So what I mean by that is, as it pertains to, say, the morality of a culture or a particular society, everybody knows that murder's wrong. Have you ever
Right.
noticed that? Have you ever
Mhm.
looked in, like, you know, in church, or not church history, in civilizational history? Like, there's no civilization that was like, yeah, let's just murder people randomly.
Hmm.
Like, I like one day some random king got up and said, "Hey, we're gonna make a law here that you can kill anybody you want. All right, go." you know, it's like, you can kill anyone you want for any reason you want. If they tick you off, you can do anything you want. No, it's there's something called the moral law, the natural law, and that law is written upon our hearts and minds, in the sense
Mm,
that we're born with this understanding that animals kill each other willy-nilly, but humans shouldn't. that's
mm,
that's and humans arguably shouldn't just kill animals willy-nilly. There's something that convicts us about how we treat creation, you see. Whereas there's nothing within creation that convicts creation about how it treats creation. Like, have you ever noticed that? Like like as I said, animals will just randomly attack each other, right? And it's like, there's there, a random storm will, like, just wipe out an entire area, a hurricane or something like that. But nature isn't convicted about that. Whereas if we created a storm to wipe out an entire island and vegetation and forestation and all this stuff, we would get convicted, wouldn't we?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So in this sense, there's a moral framework for how the world ought to be. And that's why, again, murder has never been on the books as a legitimate law.
So
So
could you say that general revelation then is essentially the way God has revealed himself to humanity outside of scripture in ways that essentially most people, or not most people, all people can generally perceive?
yes,
Like through
absolutely.
like the moral law written on your heart, through creation, through um would reason even fall into like this
Yes.
category of general? Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
now
reason.
explain special revelation.
Okay, so special revelation is God specially revealing not simply a natural law, but a positive law, where God actually works through humans to create a special revelation of of a deeper truth, and a further illumination of the reality, the supernatural reality that holds natural reality. Because there's supernatural reality, and then there's natural reality, right? There's God's reality, God as separate from his creation, and then there's the creation. So general revelation reveals to us that there is a God, as Romans chapter 1 says.
Mm.
Romans chapter 1, it's interesting that Paul starts his message of the gospel in Romans chapter 1. He goes, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because the power of God is salvation, right? And then he starts off and saying, for the wrath of God is revealed against those who work wickedness, because they are without excuse, that they should have acknowledged the fact that God exists. Well, what is Paul talking about? He's talking about general revelation. He's saying that the gospel, he goes from acknowledging the gospel as special revelation about God to a pivots to natural or general revelation through the natural world and through the natural law, and saying you actually have no excuse not to believe in God, but because you've stubbornly chosen to turn away from God and put obstacles in the way of your of a basic understanding of God that doesn't even really require faith. It's fascinating that Paul is saying that the belief in God doesn't even really require faith, in the sense of a special grace given to you to further illuminate truth. Paul says clearly, plainly in Romans chapter 1 that humankind is without excuse.